as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It's a very popular verse in the Bible. Just about anyone who's been involved in the religion for any length of time knows that scripture. So as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And so then we might strive to attempt to control the things that we think in our heart. But what's very interesting, and I think as we introspectively look at ourselves, we'll recognize that we really don't have that much control over the things that we think in our heart, okay? I mean, where if I have an issue, say that I'm dealing with, or maybe a temptation or a challenge or something that I've been facing, and I just sit down and decide, well, I'm not going to have that temptation anymore. I'm not going to have that challenge anymore. I'm just not going to have it. Well, guess what? It's just not that easy, okay? Because as you think in your heart, so are you. Now, as we've discussed in previous programs, there are ways to begin to adjust how you think in your heart. And how you think in your heart, what that actually equates to is your self-perception, how you perceive yourself, okay? And so it's not very easy to simply consciously change. Because we can dress ourselves up, okay? We can wear a mask. We can put on airs and pretend. But the reality, at the end of the day, when the smoke clears and the dust settles and we're standing there alone looking at ourselves in the mirror, we recognize who we really are at that moment, okay? When there is no pretense, there is no mask, there's no disguise, okay? And again, we can begin to affect our self-perception consciously by adjusting the environment, by adjusting our surroundings, okay? By consistently functioning in a way that's outside of that who we perceive ourselves to be. Like stop associating with certain kind of people, stop listening to certain kind of music, just create a whole new environment. I know I did that when I was younger, you know. I stopped getting the buzz, you know, stopped going to clubs, stopped hanging out in those type situations, and then created a whole new environment that was conducive to a positive walk. And initially, I felt out of place. I felt like, you know, I didn't really belong there. But I just placed myself in a different environment. But in time, and functioning, and living, eating, breathing, sleeping, and waking in that environment, I began to evolve into that individual. My perception, the perception of myself changed, or in other words, how I thought in my heart about myself began to change, okay? So as a man thinketh in his heart, again, it's not that easy, but you can change. Now, what's very important is that the changes it's very necessary to recognize that you cannot change based on someone else's suggestion, okay? Otherwise, husbands and wives and children, you know, they'd all be walking that fine line because they'd adjust based on someone else's expectations, but it just doesn't work that way. You have to be the one. You have to be motivated. You have to desire. You have to see a value in a life adjustment like that, okay? And so I know we have our holy books, and our holy books tell us a particular thing or interpret it a particular way, but usually that's not enough. I mean, that's enough to sort of put on that pretense again. But then you see a lot of preachers coming out of the closets, you know. You find a lot of ministers, you know, and rabbis and imams, you know, succumbing to the allure of power, you know, another temptation, another perception that gives an individual a perception that they are, you know, better than other folks, you know. But the reality is that our holy books. Now, as many of you know, I'm a minister, you know, in the Christian religion, but I'm sort of a progressive minister because I came from a place of having been raised in a church as a young person, departing the faith to become an atheist, and not an angry atheist, but just an atheist for like 10 years, and then one night having an epiphany and recognizing that there is something, that I would believe that there is something greater, okay? So I'm a progressive minister that has had experiences throughout my life that have led me to recognize that there is an error in religion. Okay, an oxymoron, and I'm a minister, right? Yeah, that's the best place to be. Because the reality is, you have people, within our churches, within our temples, within our mosques, that are struggling, that are wanting to be a particular way, but they're just not that way. That is not who they are, and so they're in turmoil, they're in struggle. And my feeling is that, man, life is short. Don't waste your life being miserable based on someone else's expectation. Be it religious or otherwise, okay? I think the key is for all of us is just to be good, okay? To treat other people well, or from the Holy Book, from the Bible, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And for me, I recognize that there is something greater, for me, I believe, than us, that which we have emanated from, however we emanated. And so to me, using the holy books as the litmus test is unacceptable, and often simply creates a bondage that even the leaders of those religious groups don't follow. And if they were honest, the folks would know. And to be quite honest, the folks know anyway. And if they don't know, they're going to find out. Because it's very difficult to keep up a charade forever when all eyes are on you, okay? So for me, I look at the religions then as sort of and the holy books were penned by men. So when I say that, it doesn't really diminish that from which we've emanated. What it diminishes is simply the pre-medieval assumptions that those folks, even to the best of their ability, based on their knowledge, insight, understanding, science even, could conceive. So I might challenge those things, but I might be grateful for that source from which we've emanated. And even from a scientific perspective, if I can't comprehend the source, if I can't conceive in my small mind, I can at least recognize the product of that source. And in my relation and my love for the product of that source, humanity, each other, I am in fact reverencing that source from which we've emanated, okay? So if we can't conceive the source, if we can't conceive what God, Allah, Yahweh, actually is, outside of what's been written in these holy books, as we begin to appreciate the product of the source, until we comprehend the source, we are appreciating the source by appreciating the product of that source. And I dare say, as we are appreciating the product of that source wholeheartedly, the reality of the source will become more and more clear to us. Okay? Which is why I find it not unbelievable then that even the Bible, even Scripture, suggests that we love God with all our heart and we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Now, just logically, considering that verse, we recognize that it's a lot easier, it's a lot humanly easier to love something that we see than something that we don't see. So then my suggestion and my assumption is then that as we truly begin loving what we do see, each other, which is a product of the source from which we've emanated, we are in fact loving the source from which we've emanated by loving the product of that source, which is us, okay? That being said, so then let's get back to, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. I didn't want to really address that until we got the point that we should be loving each other, okay? Because when you don't love an individual, it's easy to come at them very harsh, okay? And so let's establish then that as religious folks or as spiritual folks or simply, good human beings, we need to embracing each other as fellow human beings. I mean, I think we all pretty much agree that what goes around comes around. or from a biblical. I was speaking to a young man recently. He wasn't a religious person at all, you know. And I was saying, "Have you ever heard the concept of sowing and reaping?" And he goes, "No, I haven't." I said, "Well, how about what goes around comes around?" "Oh yeah, of course I have. It's the same thing." Okay. And so as you begin treating others well, that wellness begins to manifest within your own life. Okay, that's from a religious, secular perspective, and the reason it's from a religious or secular perspective because it's simply true. What goes around comes around. Okay, and so you begin trying to treat people right. Now the problem is, I think, is that if your motivation is simply for something to come around, so you're treating people right just so you can get something, that's not really treating people right. You know, that's the issue that I find, you know, in churches today, is the motivation, okay? Because it's not what you're doing that creates the reaping. It's why you're doing it. Because we're not talking about just planting, you know, a tomato seed in the ground and watering it the right season it comes up. We're talking about like a spiritual concept, that connection that we have one to another as human beings. And when I say spiritual, that's not religious, you know. A lot of things, you know, that the religions have sort of appropriated, like healing, it's just to make well. A spiritual connectedness is just the reality that we are all connected as we've emanated from the same source, okay? And even the concept of what goes around comes around, or sowing and reaping, how would that be unless we were connected, okay? We're connected. We just haven't figured that out. How yet, okay? But the point is, your motivation is everything. And so, you know, we see in church, you know, often, you know, we're coerced or we're encouraged to give so we can get back. That isn't a spiritual goodness, okay? That's selfishness. That's flesh. I want this, so I'm going to give so I can get this back. No, the motivation. Scripture tells us, I believe, you know, about how a person should give cheerfully, okay? So that cheerfully is an individual that desires to give happily, not simply, you know, as an attempt to get something back for themselves. You know, there we've deviated back to the place where we are the center of attention. You know, we are the primary focus. And so, yeah, I will give, I will help, I will sow, but only so that I can receive something. You know, there's a piece missing in that. You know, there's the love missing in that. There's the spirituality missing with that. All that really entails is a manipulation of God, of the source, if that's even possible. You know. So it's very important then to have a right heart. I was sharing with an individual recently who was suffering with a situation, you know, with a loved one who seems to have gone astray. And had been to get discouraged and trying to cope and trying to motivate himself and had kind of given up the praying part, you know, because that didn't work, and just trying to cope. And I suggested to him, I said, man, you know, don't pray, you know, as you stop, but don't pray for this individual anymore. But don't give up. You know, when you come to a place of where I'm trying to cope, that simply means that I've given up and I'm just trying to survive. No, don't do that. You know, begin to pray. Begin to pray, change me, Lord. You know, help me be the person I'm supposed to be. Because evidently, if this individual is important, you know, in your life to you, you are the conduit. You know, you are the hand that's supposed to be addressing the issues, you know, the situation. You know, but oftentimes we're so hung up in our particular way that we sabotage any progress that we could have in an individual's loved one's life by being so dogmatic and so dead set on a particular ideology or belief. And so that's where we're coming from, and oftentimes that isn't helping, you know. So then begin to pray, help me to be what I'm supposed to be. And see, that right there will hold true for a religious person or a secular person. Because what you're doing is recognizing that your particular perspective may be insufficient for the situation, and in fact may be damaging, sabotaging the situation that you'd like to see cleared up. So you're opening yourself up to different ways of thinking, to different understanding. You know, it's not, you know, put the book down, put the Holy Book down a while, and just try to relate as a human being to an individual, not based on the Holy Book, but based on goodness. Okay? But anyway, this is like the precursor to this message, because we're going to talk about as a person thinks in their heart who they are. And so here we go. So we live in a land, in a nation, in a world now that's dealing with a trans issue. And it's even deeper than the trans issue. It's dealing with, this gender issue, dealing with the pronoun issue, all these particular things that individuals are believing themselves to be, and the society around them who don't see it that way are not cooperating. And so then there's a battle. We have a situation like with Gabrielle Union's child, born a boy but believes to be a girl, okay? We had that Rachel Dolezal, that white lady a few years back who believed she was black, okay? And she took a whole lot of flack for that and messed her life up. And what I'm suggesting today is that those two situations are very similar. And I want to say those two situations are exactly similar. Because these individuals actually believe what they believe. Gabrielle Union's child believes that they're a girl, although they were born a boy. Rachel Dolezal believed that she was black, even though she was born white. So what's up with that? So that right there is the crux of the problem, because you have an individual that believes they are one thing, but physically they are something else. So then there's the conflict. The conflict is they know who they believe they are, but then you have everybody around them that's looking at them, their physical traits, and expressing, no, that's not who you are, okay? And that's the problem. That's where we're sitting today. And the setup for this conversation is going to be a whole lot larger than the remedy, than the answer, okay? The answer, what I'm suggesting today is pretty simple. It's not really that deep. It's there. You are often who we are does not line up with what we are, okay? Who you are often does not line up with what you are, okay? And look, so because I talked to my kids over the years. My child might have been struggling in calculus or physics or something like that. But then you have other folks, in the class that are doing very, very well. A lot of her Indian friends. and it's very interesting. And you know what? When my daughter was in the second grade, we had her with this organization that we would pay, and they would teach the kids math. And so the kids would excel in math simply if the parents thought to take them to this program. And they'd go there like maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and they'd do these numbers, multitude of numbers, and they'd take the homework home and do the multitude of numbers home, and then come back and they'd just do that every other week or something like that. And they'd get good. So then there was nothing really special about the child that made them extra good at math. It was simply the time they spent at it, okay? For real. And so there was nothing special about the children. And so when I would deal with my child, or even my children, regarding whatever subject that they might be struggling in, I was probably aggravating them when I said this, but I would say, look, you got people in your classroom that are doing well. They got 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, just like you do. Rather than simply determine that subject, math or whatever, is not your thing, that you just can't do it, figure out how they're doing it and just do what they're doing, okay? I mean, that's my philosophy in life for success, really. Don't lament on not being successful. Find somebody who is and figure out what they did and just do it, okay? So the thing is, often our exterior does not resemble our thoughts. So we might have insecurity issues. I think everybody has insecurity issues in one way or another. And we might have self-perception issues. I just can't do that. I see that. You see it on the football field. You see it on the soccer field, lacrosse field, basketball court. You see people that are very gifted and other people who are not. Why is that? I mean, they have the same body. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. They have the same ability. They can eat the right foods, do the exercises, get enough sleep, take care of themselves and all. But oftentimes we don't do the things that we need to do to match the potential that our body has, because we don't see ourselves that way. Okay? And I can't say that it's wrong. I mean, I practiced the martial art for many years, starting as a young teenager. And I was okay. But I knew other folks that were excellent, but you know what? They exercised more than I did. They got enough sleep. They ate the right kind of foods. I didn't. I didn't do what I needed to do. And so I wasn't living up to my body's potential. Okay? So folks can look at me and say, well, you got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head just like that guy who's excellent. What's wrong with you? I don't see myself as that. That's not who I am. And so this is how we are in life. We have people who are shy. We have people who don't excel in business or whatever careers that they're in because of their self-perception, and I'm not saying it's negative, because I'm not working out. Like I try to exercise most of the time and try to eat right most of the time, but I know this lady who's like, I want to say a beast. Those people that work out use those kind of words, for a lady, a beast. But I mean, I couldn't do her workout. So it doesn't make me any less. It's just that's not who I perceive myself to be. Although I have the potential, I could do what she's doing, but I don't. And so this is an example then of you could look at my body and say, why not? When I was my fighting weight when I was a young person was like 178 pounds. And I'm like about 187 now. So I'm close to that. I can't do what I used to do, I think sometimes when an older person can't do what they used to do, I believe they can do what they used to do. They just don't want to. But anyway, the point is, oftentimes, who we perceive ourselves to be is not what we are physically. So what other people are looking at may not be who I perceive myself to be. And the point is, who is right? And what I'm suggesting is, you are right. Who you perceive yourself to be is who you are until you change it, or until it changes, until you feel like changing it, okay? And so because really who you are is not this body. Okay? The Proverbs 23:7 said, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Okay? Now, I don't believe that scripture is trying to justify, or accommodate anyone's belief. It's just making a statement that who you think you are is who you are. Because that's who you think you are. So as we look at that deeply, we got to take a pause and take a breath, man. I was in a Bible study once, and I was leading it, and I started with this, and I made that statement. This lady was, uh-oh, no, wait, she just stopped me, shut me down right then. Because we have our beliefs, our religious beliefs, and as soon as we hear contrary to what we personally believe, we have this knee-jerk reaction. We want to fight back. We don't stop. We don't listen. We don't pause. We don't reflect and contemplate. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Okay? So each of us, again, are 2 people. We are the person who we believe we are. And we have the person that our body reflects physically. Okay? And that's okay. We are all this. None of us measure up 100% to the potential of our physicality that others would place upon us. This woman that works out like crazy has invited me on a numerous occasion to come work out with her. Because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Okay. So that person that you are, it has no race. I've known people, growing up as a military kid, so many mixed families, men marrying women from here and there and everywhere. I had this one friend whose mom was white and his dad was black, and he was in a big conflict all of his life. He didn't know who he was. He knew who he wanted to be, but who he wanted to be wasn't what he looked like. So he was in a dilemma, okay? Very miserable. But if he had just understood, and as many of us should understand, that who we are is not necessarily what we are. Who you are is the individual inside, that thinking part of you. Now, I'm saying this like because we're dealing with the pronouns and the transgenders and the trans this and all of that, which, I have a 17-year-old daughter, so she has helped me along understanding this, all this stuff. But they're fighting each other. Both sides are dug in deep. No, I may be born a man, but I'm a girl, or I may be born, a female, but I'm a male. And no, you're not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. You got arguing going on. What I'm suggesting is, in a sense, they're both right. And I know this might rub the religious people the wrong way. And I know this might rub the secular people the wrong way who are in the other corner. But we have to look at this thing right. If who you are is not visible for anyone to see, that's who you are. The thinking part of you, man, when I see a corpse, when I see a dead body laying in a casket, that's not who that person is. That dead body is what that person is. That man is dead, That lady is dead. That old person is dead. But that's not the individual. That's not the who. That's the what. Okay? So you're not white or black or Asian or anything else. You are not male or female or anything else. You are who you have determined and chosen to be. But it's not absolute. Your body is absolute until you put the knife to it or until you do cosmetic surgery on it. But come on, we still know the truth. Yeah, you can cut off your ear, but that place is where your ear is supposed to be. That's the physicality of you, okay? That doesn't really adjust. Now, you could shape it and form it differently, but it is what it is. And so it's not necessary to convince. If you believe this is who you are, then don't try to convince somebody that what they're looking at is who you're thinking that you are, because who you're thinking that you are is not your body. Who you're thinking you are is you. Who you are is what you believe you are. What you are is simply what you are. So for either side, if you believe you are this and it doesn't line up with your physicality, you can't expect somebody who's looking at your physicality to buy into that's not what you are. Sort of like the old Richard Pryor, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? No, it's true. This is what you are. But it may not line up with who you are. And so as an individual looking at someone, the physicality of an individual, I can't tell you who you are. I can only tell you what you are. So both sides need to step back from this argument and recognize that they're arguing from two different lines that don't intersect, that are parallel. So you're arguing an argument that is not really germane to your situation, and vice versa. Who you are is not necessarily equal to what you are. Who you are is invisible. Who you are is your self-perception. Who you believe yourself to be, that is who you are. For real. And I remember I went overseas as a young person. I was kind of shy, when I was in the military initially, in the States. And I went overseas to where nobody knew me. And I took on this character of this cool guy, this player, this cool guy. And I became that. And that's who I became. I was what I thought I was. Okay? I remember I was working for this corporation, NCR Corporation, years ago. And there was this woman who had been a cheerleader in a particular college in the Midwest. And of course she had an college education, and she came to work for our corporation. And she really wasn't that pretty. But she believed she was. And she wore sharp clothes, and she was in shape, and she walked straight, walked confident. Everybody was crazy about her. And I'm like, wait a minute. But it didn't matter. Because she believed she was beautiful. And folks just bought into it. So they weren't convinced by her physicality. They were convinced by the perception that she had of herself. She carried herself in that way, and people bought into it. And so I'm just saying we need to stop the battle on both sides of this thing. If I see your physical trait, I can't argue with you with who you are. And knowing what your physical trait is, yet you are something else. You can't argue that with someone who's looking at you. Be content in who you are. And really, I think if we all simply were content in who we were personally, we wouldn't find it so necessary to convince people to believe something different about ourselves or about themselves. Be content in yourself. Be confident in yourself. And stop worrying about someone else. Stop worrying about what others think about you. And stop worrying about what you think about others. So there's no one, I don't want to say there's no one innocent here, because that sort of is like guilt, but the reality is we're all culprits in this confusion, and it's a confusion that can never be rectified, because what you are is hardly ever equal to who you are. How's that? I hope we did okay here. Hey, we're going to leave you with this. We're going to give you time to think about it, meditate upon it, take the time, stop. You know, we just, so many knee-jerk reactions all the time. I think it's a result of, like, you know, social media, politics and all that. We're just ready to jump if somebody says something we don't agree with. Don't do that, man. Man, conversations, arguments, disagreements, those are opportunities to evolve, because nobody knows everything. Man, I was in an argument with this guy the other day, a discussion, man, and it was like, no, I knew I was right. He knew I was right. I went back and Googled our conversation. I was wrong. I went right back to him and told him, hey, man, you were right. Because I want to be right. And sometimes the only way we find out that we're wrong is through conversation and then consideration and then acquiescing to truth. How's that?